The sniper's choice. The bolt-action rifle is the absolute gold standard of precision, range, and hitting a target a mile away. To fire, the user manually lifts the metal handle, pulls back the bolt to eject a casing, and pushes it forward to strip a new round from the magazine. Then, it is locked down. It is slow, but the rigid lockup means better accuracy and the ability to handle the explosive pressure. The bolt action is also more reliable because it has fewer moving parts than semi-automatic rifles. The downside, if you miss your first shot and the target moves, you might not have another shot. The first needle-fire bolt action was the Dracy, invented in 1824, but the Mauser brothers perfected the modern design in the late 1800s. The most iconic is the Mauser 98, the father of almost all modern hunting rifles. They typically fire the .308 Winchester, .30-06 Springfield, or .300 Win Mag round, but calibers are vast, with the 50 BMG used for many famous modern snipers. For the shooter who values one perfect shot over a spray of bullets, this is the king. But those who remember the Wild West will remember a completely different rifle. Instead of a bolt handle or pump, the lever-action rifle uses a lever around the trigger guard. You crank it down and forward to eject and reload, usually with a very satisfying mechanical clack-clack. It's much faster than the bolt action and much flatter to carry, making it perfect for sliding into a saddle scabbard on a horse. These rifles usually feed from a tube under the magazine under the barrel, allowing for high ammo capacity, but limits the type of ammo that is usable. The bullets are stacked nose to primer, forcing the use of flat-nosed bullets to prevent a chain reaction explosion. Modern versions with a standard detachable magazine are available nowadays, but they used to be poor choices for long-range shooting, as flat bullets have bad aerodynamics. They're also still iconic and fun, but reloading the tube does take quite a long time. The first commercially successful lever action was the Henry rifle, patented by Benjamin Tyler Henry in 1860. Popular modern classics are the Winchester Model 1894 and 1873. They usually fire rounds like the .30-30 or pistol calibers like .45 Colt, bridging the gap between a revolver and a rifle. Semi-automatic rifles dominate the modern battlefield. They use the energy of the fired shot to cycle the action immediately. One pull of the trigger equals one shot, instantly. No levers, no bolts, and no manual labor. This allows for quick follow-up shots and lower recoil because the mechanism absorbs the kick. These rifles are the standard for both military and police, but are often used for home defense as well. One downside is the complexity. More parts means more cleaning and a higher chance of jamming from dirt. These rifles are heavily regulated around the world, but the first one designed was the Mannlicher Model 85, though the M1 Garand became the most famous early military option. Today, the most popular model is the AR-15, which typically fires .556 NATO rounds. But there's one that is even more terrifying. If you're still watching, it means you're liking our videos. So, why aren't you subscribed already? That's just one small step for you, but a leap for us here on the channel. So thank you. Anyway, for the average citizen, the assault rifle is the forbidden fruit. It's the guns that you see in video games, and by definition, they fire as long as you hold down the trigger. They work similarly to the semi-automatic rifle, with numerous moving components that automatically reload the next round. While civilian assault weapons are semi-automatic, one shot per pull, true automatic rifles are military tools meant for suppressing the enemy and winning firefights through sheer volume of fire. They usually fire intermediate cartridges like .556 or .545, bridging the gap between submachine guns and full-power battle rifles. Most modern armies use them, but they can be extremely expensive for civilians, and they're usually restricted by law. Practically, they're also very wasteful. Notable models include the M4 carbine, the AK-47 select fire version, and the HK-416. Now, when you think of pump action, it's pretty easy to think of a shotgun. But there are pump-action rifles as well. This is the forgotten middle child, and just like the shotgun, they work by sliding the forend back and forth. They're faster than a bolt-action, and arguably more reliable than a semi-automatic, since the user provides the energy to cycle the round. Many people also refer to these as slide actions. They're incredibly popular in places where semi-automatics are banned, offering a good rate of fire for hunters driving deer or boar. The downside here is that the sliding forend can rattle, making them less stealthy out in the woods, and they're generally not as accurate as bolt actions because the barrel isn't free-floating. One of the first pump-action rifles was the Colt Lightning Carbine in 1884, designed to compete with Winchester levers. A popular modern model you can find is the Remington 7600, often used for deer trackers in the dense forests of the Northeast. They handle standard hunting rounds like .270 or .308, offering a working man's rifle experience. But if none of these get the job done, the big brother of the assault rifles got your back. Now, assault rifles are effective, but they're usually smaller and they use more intermediate rounds. Battle rifles use full-on bolt-action rounds like .308 or 7.62 by 51. While they are usually select fire, they are capable of full auto, but when you try this, it could feel like holding a jackhammer. They offer a much better range and stopping power than assault rifles do, capable of punching through cover that would stop a smaller bullet. However, the ammo is heavy, meaning soldiers can carry less of it, and the guns themselves are long and heavy. They were the standard in the early Cold War, before the world switched over to lighter guns. The most iconic model is likely the FNFAL, known as the right arm of the free world. Another legend is the H&K G3. These rifles are for when you need to hit hard and far, but still want a magazine-fed system. These rifles are still kind of old, but this next one takes us into the space age. Have you ever wondered why someone would place a magazine behind the trigger group? Well, this is the Bullpup rifle, and it's purposely done to allow the gun to have the full length of the barrel for bullet velocity, and still remain short and compact. They're usually made for urban combat, especially for clearing tight corners and getting out of vehicles. But trigger pull is sometimes a pain, and can lead to jams, because it needs to connect with the magazine at the back. Also, left-handed shooters might get a hot casing to the ear if the gun isn't modified. One of the very first accepted models was the Stuart AUG, but now we've got stuff like the IWI Taver X95 and the Springfield Helion. Now, we've already gone and covered the more traditional bolt-action rifles, but for those who need a little more speed, the straight pull bolt actions are best. Unlike a standard turn bolt, where you have to lift, pull, push, and then lower the handle, a straight pull requires only two motions: pull back and push forward. Its internal mechanisms rotate the bolt head for you, which makes them significantly faster than a standard bolt action. Unfortunately, it is a very complex rifle, and often quite expensive to manufacture. Many early models had a tendency for the bolt to fly backwards in the shooter's face if not assembled correctly. One of the earliest was the Canadian Ross rifle, but the modern king now is the Blazer R8, a luxury rifle that costs about as much as a used sedan. They're chambered in almost any caliber you can imagine. But in terms of price, there is something else out there that can give it a good run for its money. Known as the wealthy hunter's insurance policy, the double rifle is a break action with two barrels that are usually side by side. They're very similar to the shotgun version, but their purpose is to stop dangerous animals. These rifles are used for elephant and buffalo hunting out in Africa, and since they usually charge, the hunter needs two shots just to make sure they can take it down. It has two independent firing mechanisms, which means if one firing pin breaks, the other barrel still works. Unfortunately, they are heavy. I mean, really, really heavy, sometimes up to 13 pounds. But the real downside here is the cost. They date all the way back to the mid-1800s. A very famous premium model is the Holland & Holland Royal, and the 500 Ham. They fire massive cartridges like the 470 Nitro Express, which generates enough recoil to bruise your shoulder instantly. But there's another one that the sharpshooter loved. The falling block rifle is a single shot option with a very strong action. To load, you lower a lever which drops a solid block of steel, opening the breech. You slide in a massive cartridge, raise the lever to seal the block, and cock the hammer. Then, you're ready to fire. These rifles are extremely robust and can handle the most powerful black powder cartridges ever made. Because the action is so short, you can have a longer barrel in a shorter gun. The downside, though, is pretty obvious. You've only got one shot. If you miss, reloading is slow. They were the sniper rifles of the 1870s, the most famous model being the Sharps rifle, made famous in the movie Quigley Down Under. The most famous modern one, though, is the Ruger No. 1. They typically fire big, heavy rounds like the 45 to 70 Government, but can be chambered in various rounds. But as complicated as this was, Remington designed something a little bit simpler in the 1860s. The rolling block rifle is simplicity defined and involves a hammer and a breech block that literally roll backward to open the chamber. You insert a round, roll the block forward, cock the hammer, and fire. The hammer actually locks the breech block in place when it falls, making it a very clever, safe design. They were the AK-47 of the late 19th century. Cheap, reliable, and sold to armies all over the world. They were practically indestructible, but like the falling block, they are single shot only. They aren't used for combat anymore, but are beloved by historical reenactors. The classic model is the Remington rolling block, while the modern version is the rolling block Sporting 28. They were chambered in everything from small rimfires to massive military cartridges like 43 Spanish. But none of these rifles can destroy tanks like this next one. If you've ever wondered whether a gun can stop a tank, meet the anti-material rifle. These are massive rifles designed to destroy equipment, radar dishes, parked aircraft, and light vehicles. They offer an insane range and can hit targets over half a mile away with insane energy. But the downside, of course, is the weight, with some weighing over 30 pounds, and the recoil being able to detach your retinas if you don't hold it correctly. The muzzle blast alone kicks up a dust storm that gives away your position instantly. They are mostly military tools, the most famous model being the Barrett M82, invented by Ronnie Barrett in 1982, and the Macmillan TAC-50. They fire massive 50 BMG rounds, which is essentially a small artillery shell. And now, let's transfer from the big rifles to the pilot's best friend. These rifles are specialized options designed to be taken apart and stored in a backpack. They're not often meant for fighting wars or hunting big game, but they help catch rabbits and squirrels for someone stranded in the middle of nowhere. They're usually semi-automatic and fire small rimfire ammo, and made from plastic and aluminum to be as light as possible. Unfortunately, they do have terrible sights and really don't have any accuracy whatsoever, but they float in water, so I guess that counts. For the most famous model, think James Bond and the Henry AR-7, or the Ruger 1022. They use .22 caliber long rifle ammo. But before modern rifles were a thing, the pirates had their own treasure. For centuries, this was the only rifle in town. You pour black powder down the barrel, wrap a lead ball in a cloth patch, ram it down with a rod, pour a little priming powder in a pan on the outside, and snap the frizzen shut. When you pull the trigger, a piece of flint strikes steel, creating sparks that ignite the pan, which burns through a hole to ignite the main charge. They were the only rifles available to pirates, and were very popular during the Civil War. But, of course, they have many weaknesses, like being slow and extremely sensitive to rain. Your powder won't ignite when wet. The massive ball of smoke also blinds the person firing it. The Kentucky long rifle is the icon of the American frontier, and the brown mess musket used by the British Redcoats. They don't use cartridges, just loose components. And finally, there is one rifle built on a strict philosophy. This is the all-rounder. It isn't just a mechanical action, but is designed specifically by Colonel Jeff Cooper. It's bolt-action, short, and weighs less than 7 pounds, with a forward-mounted scope so you can keep both eyes on your surroundings. The idea was to create one single gun that could do everything: hunt, fight, and survive, all without being too heavy. While great in theory, many shooters actually find looking through the forward scope a bit weird, and they don't really excel at any one specific thing. They're a jack of all trades, master of none. The defining model is the Stuhr Scout, which actually has a backup bipod built into the plastic stock. Another popular model is the Ruger Gunsight Scout. They usually fire .308 Winchester. Thank you everybody so much for watching. These here have been the most popular rifles explained. But something else you might like is the smallest guns ever created. Be sure to check out this next video and make sure to like and subscribe.